Welcome back. You're watching the Mining Outlook Show brought to you by Wardle Armstrong on Core Finance, and I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, as everybody knows, mining in Europe is a thing of the past. Or is it? Well, one person who might take exception to that is joining me now is Chris Broadbent, who's Research Director at Wardle Armstrong, and you are also Project Director, aren't you, of a project which is designed, dare I say, to rejuvenate mining in Europe?
Absolutely. It's part of the Horizon 2020 programme that the EU has funded. And I suppose the EU has gone through a major change over the last few years, whereas mining was always regarded as something that, as you say, used to happen in Europe and something that the EU would like to see disappear from Europe. I suppose with the advent of the rise of China and identification of critical raw materials within Europe, and the realisation that 80% of those critical raw materials were found and almost exclusively found and produced by China, the European Union came to the conclusion that security of supply and having some access to non-Chinese deposits would be quite a useful thing for European industry. And cutting a long story short, the Horizon 2020 programme, which is a massive €2 billion research project across all science and engineering, included in that there was a portion of raw materials research. And the aims for the European Union were to promote mining technologies, promote processing technologies. There was a realisation that skills were on the wane and they needed to be preserved. And there was also the hope and desire that such activities would kickstart a renaissance in European mining and would lead to the opening of new mines in Europe, especially for the so-called critical raw materials.
I should say that I'm joined, of course, by my co-host, Phil Newell, who's Managing Director of Wardle Armstrong. Is this something, Phil, that's close to your heart?
Yes, it is. I mean, as Chris has said, the mining industry in Europe is, as you said, Charlie, at the beginning, is very much an historical factor. But clearly, and certainly from an investment standpoint, we're seeing more and more interest in companies wishing to pick up projects in Europe. And for Europe, I include the Caucasus, Balkans as well. This area is now becoming a real flavour of the month. So the work that Chris is managing on behalf of the FAME project is fitting in very nicely with, if you like, a lot of international mining companies' aspirations of what they're trying to do in Europe. And many of the spin-offs that FAME is producing does seem to be kick-starting a number of deposits. And I think Chris can obviously tell you a little bit more about that specifically.
Chris, tell us in broad terms then, what is the project, and it's FAME, is that right?
FAME,
and what does it stand for?
Flexible and Mobile Economic Processing. It has nothing to do with the musical by the name of FAME, but
that is disappointing. We were hoping for a little number later on.
Song and dance routine, but flexible and mobile economic processing, and the economic part there is very important. There's no point having these projects if they're not economically viable. And there's a realisation, I think, that modularisation and mobility is quite a useful asset to have, especially in a European context where many of the deposits are relatively small, certainly by world standards, relatively small. So having small modular equipment which is mobile helps not only the potential to develop one project, but if there are a number of projects in a locality, you can move from one deposit to the next. So this whole concept of flexibility, mobility, having modularisation, and to be innovative with the process flow sheet, to be able to create new, I hate to say the word new technologies, but it's putting old technologies together in a new way so that you can come up and have a tailor-made, bespoke solution to unlock the mineral wealth, which obviously exists in Europe. And that's not to say that those same technologies can't be exported out of Europe, but certainly it was seen by the EU as a way of trying to unlock the mineral wealth which is in Europe.
So is it an open-ended programme, or does it have a definite time, and what is it hoping to achieve within that time?
It's a 4-year funded programme, 7.4 million euros, and that was something which quite staggered me at the start of this project. 7.4 million euros is a pretty hefty research budget for a mining company. And within the EU Horizon 2020 programme, there's been 168 million euros worth of research in the raw materials field. Fame is part of that. It's 7.4 million euros worth of that budget. Started on the 1st of January 2015. It ends and funding finishes the end of December next year, 2018.
So it is a question, will Brexit have happened by then, or does it not matter?
Brexit won't quite have happened by then, so for Fame...
We'll get our money still, I hope.
Brexit isn't a consideration. It's certainly a consideration for going forward, whether or not British firms can partner European firms, because there will be similar projects going on into the future. There's a hope and an expectation that the UK will be allowed to participate in that, but obviously that's dependent on the Brexit negotiations.
Okay, and what are the goals?
The goals of Fame, it was a very ambitious project, and say flexible and mobile processing. We chose 3 ore types, and those were the skarns, grisons and pegmatites. We chose those ore types because they were relatively common within Europe, and because within those ore types there were a number of the critical raw materials which Europe needed, or European industry needs. We had 6 reference ores, 2 of each of the ore types, and the test work has been designed to unlock previously unexploited deposits. And a classic there is one of the deposits is called Keliber. Keliber is a pegmatite deposit in Finland, and it contains lithium spodumene. And obviously lithium is a metal which is very much in the news at the moment. There is hardly any European production of lithium. Hopefully, as a result, one of the results of Fame is that the mining activity at Keliber will commence possibly by the end of 2019. So Fame will have been responsible in a small way for bringing that new mine on stream. We're also looking at tin, tungsten, and recovery of byproducts, especially indium, germanium, which are often associated with some of these ore deposits in Europe.
So can I ask you then, I'm a small mining company for these purposes, and I've got a bit of a sniff of the idea that there's some pegmatites in some undisclosed part of Europe that I think might be economic, and I might want to try and develop them. How do I interact with Fame?
Fame is a consortium, 16 partners across Europe, led by Wardell Armstrong. We're the project coordinator. There is, we are well represented at most of the major conferences in Europe. We have a very active website. We're also very much, the EU sees part of the Horizon 2020 programme is a dissemination of knowledge, and we're very active of putting that message out through the journals, through publications, about how deposits should be looked at. Not so much the specifics of the process flow sheet, but the generic model for how you should look at or what you should look for in the processing, what flexibility, what new ideas can you think of to be able to process a deposit economically viably. And one of the instances there, looking very much at comminution. And it's a fact that 4% of the world's total energy usage is in the comminution, crushing and grinding of minerals. If we can have even a small percentage improvement in that by having some innovative idea to be able to liberate those minerals more efficiently, more effectively, and use less energy, can have a dramatic impact on the energy usage of the mine. And so Fame is all about getting that message that there are innovative solutions, and there are possibly new ways of looking at how to develop these small, complex deposits in Europe, which to date have either been processed 100 years ago, or for the last 100 years people have been saying, no, they're too complex, we can never make any money out of them. And we're demonstrating that with these new technologies and this new approach, the modular, flexible equipment being deployed on these projects, there's a way of being able to realise the value of these commodities. Say, in Europe, the European Union are funding the project, but also we can export that technology overseas, which historically is what Europe has always done. It's led the world in mining and mineral processing technology.
So, Phil, I'm going to come to you for the last word. This doesn't sound like a grand renaissance of European mining. It's not going to return to where it was in, say, the 1930s. But you know, this is not an interesting opportunity for Wardle Armstrong.
It is, and it's a little bit off the wall to what Wardle Armstrong usually does. Chris is our research director, and this very much is a research project, and it is not our bread and butter. But the way this fits into Wardell's core services, if you like, is perfect, because we have a very large mineral processing test facility, and a lot of the famed test work that goes with this program has been done through our facilities. So it fits in very well with what we're doing, and it's also very good for getting, if you like, the consortium's name around Europe. Your question, though, about could a mining junior come up and approach FAME and saying, can you give me the keys to a deposit X? It's not. It doesn't work like that. But what it should do, it's going to provide a lot better, if you like, framework for how companies should look for some of the commodities that FAME is particularly interested in. And if you remember from Chris's first list of what those commodities are, they're very much, if you like, the new commodities. They're linked to the batteries, to EVs, etc. So it's the sexy end of the market, and I think it will, to a certain degree, regenerate some of these old mining districts in Europe, particularly the Herzgebirge, which is the home of metallurgy in Europe, that Czech-German border area where a lot of these Grisons, pegmatite, tin, tungsten, lithium deposits are. And that area is already now seeing quite a renaissance in mining.
Excellent. All right. I think that's all we've got time for, but I must thank you, Chris Broader. Thank you very much indeed. Project Director for FAME.
Project Director for FAME and Research Director for Wardle Armstrong.
And of course my co-host Phil Newell, Phil the Managing Director of Wardle Armstrong. Thank you very much indeed. That's all we got time for. You have been watching me, Charlie Gibson, bringing you the Mining Outlook show on Core Finance on the first day of Mines and Money. We will very much hope to see you there at the conference over the next couple of days. And in the meantime, you have a very capital day.